Hello, everyone, and welcome to Falcons Corner. I'm Brian Grasso, and alongside me is my coworker, as usual, Jack Sapino here.
Hey, everybody. What's up? What's going on? We have the coach for varsity lacrosse here on the Zoom call. We're going to interview some of these coaches and ask them 5 questions. 5 questions. Dan Ritchie, how are you? Welcome to the Falcons Corner.
Hey, great. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Dan, 8-10 record, correct, right? Talk to me
That's right.
about this year's performance. What did you like about it? What can you do differently? And how can you improve as a coach and help your team as well?
Sure. So this was my first year coaching at Danvers High. Before that, I was at Marblehead for 9 seasons, and I saw the head coach opportunity and took it this year. Overall, when we got started, we had a pretty good vibe going early on in the season, and then we had a few injuries that really brought us back. Anytime you're going into something as a first year coach, you're trying to figure out the culture, trying to get to know the guys. I really early on, I knew I had some really good players, some quality guys. We only had a roster of 20. So that is a smaller roster for a varsity team. You kind of want, 23, 24, somewhere in that vicinity. And we also had a few young guys that were either new to the sport or, just physically, they still have a couple more years of development to go. So, given what we had, and then given some of the things that we experienced with injuries, I was really proud of the guys for fighting through the adversity. Danny Vituzios, he went down in a game against Masco, and he's our starting goalie. And we really didn't have a backup, to be honest. We had to train a new goalie and figure things out along the way. Sophomore Aiden Perry stepped up, and from game to game, we just tried to figure it out. And we got some wins along the way, some really key wins that, I think will keep the momentum going into next season.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's interesting you talk about resiliency. Brian, it's tough as it is being a goalie on a team, but to come back from an injury and have someone else step in that spot and you're kind of lost. Talk to me a little bit about that and, what do you do,
I mean, it's definitely tough, when you have your starting goalie just out with an injury and you don't really have a backup, so you kind of have to train, whoever wants to step up. And I remember, I forget which game it was and who the goalie was, but he made a couple of great saves, and I had one of the parents standing next to me when I was filming, and I said, wow, this kid is really good, for a goalie. And the father was like, yeah, it's his first game, as a goalie, ever playing as a goalie. So, I mean, I believe it's tough. I mean, I can't really picture myself in the shoes of that player, but it's definitely tough to kind of have to step up for the team, when your starting goalie is out with an injury, and you kind of just have to step it up. So, but, I mean, you did a fair share. You definitely did a great job coaching this team, especially with that tough decision. So, kind of to ask you is, what was the level of play this year? I mean, from having to choose a player that was tough to learn more about being a goalie, kind of talk about more about that.
Yeah, that training process. That would be interesting to learn about.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I had great assistant coaches, Keith Tersolo. He was doing a lot with the goalies. He was working with Danny predominantly. And then when he got injured, he just continued working on Aiden Perry's fundamentals. They worked on every day, Danny included, even though, Danny got injured. Sometimes I've had guys in the past who they'll stop coming to practice, or maybe, they're doing rehab or something like that. And Danny was all in, even after the injury. He was there helping Aiden, cheering on the goalies. We also had a freshman who was willing to step up, Lincoln Smith. He was ready to get in there. We also had Connor Harvey, who was willing to get in there. And with goalie in lacrosse, it's not easy. I remember back in the day, I had to step in one time. We were playing a box lacrosse game, and I stepped in net, and the amount of bruises I had all over my legs, on my shins by the end of that game, I just was I told myself I'm not doing that again. And that's really the mentality of a goalie. Once you learn your technique and fundamentals, you can sort of use your stick to save your body a little bit more. But that takes a few years to develop. And Aiden, in talks with him, he's really into it, and it takes a special guy. But once you find him, and once they start going to camps and learning the technique, it's such a huge position for this level. They can win games for you. If you don't have a solid goalie, you're in a lot of trouble. A lot of things just start to break down defensively, and it even affects the offense psychologically, because you're like, man, I always have to play catch up here, and you have to hurry up the offense a bit. And so it is the key position. I'm hoping Danvers Youth Lacrosse, I'm really hoping they're developing some young goalies to come up, because in order to establish really a winning program, you need to have solid goaltending.
Yeah, and being the first-year coach, coming in as a first-year coach, what is that like to create that chemistry for a team, and how do you go about that, being that coach that, it's the first time meeting everyone. It's not like you have chemistry from year to year or anything like that. Talk to me about that mentality that you need to have as a coach to help out your team.
Yeah, a lot of it starts with the captains. Early on, when I was interviewing for the job, and then once I heard that I got the job, I met Lucas, Jackson, Colby. I met some of the seniors, and right away I felt like we clicked. It's just from there, once you connect with your leadership group, it doesn't necessarily just have to be your captains. Usually on a high school team, it's your seniors that do a lot of the leadership aspect. If you have a solid group of seniors, it really trickles down to the rest of the team. I kind of felt that right away, that if guys were stepping on a line, or if they weren't hustling in practice, or if there was something in a game that they didn't like, I would have meetings with those particular players. I would also, before practice or after practice, have meetings with those captains, or even some of the other seniors, and we would just talk it out. I would say, some things that I noticed and I felt like we could improve on, and I would get their perspective as well. I think you just have to have that communication with your leaders, and from there it sort of trickles down to the rest of the locker room. And as you go throughout the season, you get to know some of the guys. You kind of know which ones you can push a little harder, or what some of their weaknesses are that you want them to improve on. So every day you're kind of evaluating that as the head coach. You're trying to figure out, all right, what really makes this kid tick, and what are some things that I can do to help him be the best version of himself.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, when you look at chemistry and communication in a sport, it is really important. It's that thing that you should have every single day of your life, right? To communicate with one another and to help one another out to really get that team's victory. Brian, talk to me a little bit about communication, importance of sports, and how much that really impacts a team in being able to get a win like that.
Well, it's almost like you're talking with your coworkers. You want to make sure that you have great chemistry with your coworkers in terms of whatever setting it is, whether it's, if you're a doctor or a police officer or a firefighter, communication is key. And in the field of sports, you want to make sure that all of your players are on the same page. Everyone has a common goal, whether it's to win a game, to make sure that not one player is playing the best, but everyone's playing the best.
Yeah, team effort.
And
Absolutely.
that's the most important thing, is team chemistry. You want to make sure that each player is, playing the best of the ability, while also making sure as a coach that you're hitting on some of these goals. So the next question I kind of want to segue into is, you talked about being a first-year coach. What were some of the goals that you had in mind preseason, and then after the season, if you hit those goals, or if there were certain goals that you kind of just missed out on and that you hope to bring about into the next season?
So you're always thinking about wins and losses, right? And to me, the wins are sort of the end product of that preparation that you put in. Like I said, if you build a solid team chemistry, if you're working hard, if you care for each other, then in the end, the wins are just really going to take care of themselves. The X's and O's stuff you work on a lot in practice, and you're hoping for that positive result. In the end, we came up short really of making the playoffs by one goal. If we want to just zero in on the Ipswich game, we were right in it to the very end. They just happened to get one more than us. And again, this is with a new goalie in there. Aiden was in there and making huge saves throughout that game. And Ipswich is a very solid program. They had some talented players, and we kept punching and, just came up one goal short. I'm confident that if we had our full complement of guys throughout the season, that we would have had a few more in the win column. But that's every lacrosse season. There's going to be injuries. Over the April break, we were really shorthanded and doing our best with what we had. We had a powerhouse team that we played twice, and they went undefeated in Marblehead. They got all the way to the Final Four. We were playing against Beverly twice. They had a very good season. So we were playing against some really sound competition in the NEC, and we held our own. We had some pretty good battles with Beverly and Peabody, and I was proud of the guys after every one of those games. Even though we didn't make the playoffs, I still felt satisfied in the end, because I kind of, knew some of the adversity we had gone through, and some of the things that happened, on a lesser team. Basically, guys would quit, or they would just say, it's not in the cards this season. I'm going to enjoy my senior year, and graduation is coming, so I'm just going to pack it in. And I didn't get that sense at all this year. So I think that's going to be really important for the culture moving forward. And I was just really proud of the guys for sticking through it and finishing out the season strong, even though, maybe we didn't have as many in the win column as we originally intended.
Yeah. And what is your hope for next year? You talk about being a first-year coach, and I think it's very important to look at some of that stuff and say, we climbed the mountain. We fell a little short. How do you improve as a coach to help your players to reach the top of the mountain? Mm-hmm. And how can you, as a coach, create that story for Danvers and the Falcons for the lacrosse?
Yeah, I mean, right now we are looking at a returning roster of 10 players. So it begins really with the youth program, and we're going to have a lot of guys that maybe played lacrosse in the past and maybe stop playing for a little bit, if they want to come back and play, we have a lot of openings, positions all over the field, because we did have a pretty sizable senior class. We had 10 seniors, and so being a team of 20, that leaves us with 10 left. So we have what's nice about that is I can establish a new direction, a new foundation for the program. I just think there's a lot of opportunity in lacrosse beyond high school. I think, it's one of those sports where if you want that feeling of being on a team, of being in a brotherhood, that people are going to have your back, even after you graduate, the alumni, it's just something special about it. I think about my own experience. I was born in Syracuse, New York, and just growing up there playing lacrosse, a lot of those guys are still kicking around and I reach out to, and I played at St. Lawrence. So it's always fun to reach out to those guys. You're always going to have those connections. And, if kids at Danvers High are looking for that experience, lacrosse can give it to you. You have to work hard. You have to be physically ready. You have to be willing to push yourself. It's the type of sport where you're going to be out in the cold rain one day, and then you're going to be in 85, 90-degree heat another day. And it's also at the end of the school year. So, mentally that can be a bit of a grind, but in the end, it's worth it. I mean, the rewards that you can get from it, they really stick with you for the rest of your life. So I'm hoping we can continue to build on what we did this year with the 20 guys that we had, and start to build a program, which would hopefully Danvers can get back to having a JV team. And hopefully, the youth program can continue to grow. But just growing those things, I think we can get there. It's just a matter of, getting the numbers up next year. I feel like, again, the core group of guys that I have, I feel really good going into it. We just need more pieces of the puzzle to come together. The pieces are there. We need more to come together.
You got to look for the pieces, and you got to look for the players that really want it and are dedicated. And it comes down to how you can get them to where they need to be, not just in life, but also in sports. And I want to thank you so much for coming on to Falcons Corner. I know you're all the way in Zoom land, but we appreciate you so much coming on the show and talking with us about lacrosse. We wish you the best of luck in your season next year. And, I want you to take a moment to really look at how well you played and be proud of that, because the accomplishments that you've done this year is going to even help you for next year. So, Dan, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show. Brian, of course, as always, you're stuck with me.
Always a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Dan, again, for letting us interview you.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Hey, guys, thank you. This is great. I hope we can do this in person, and thank you for all the coverage. Just covering local sports, it's huge. So that really helps. Again, talking about growing the program, your coverage is what's going to help get us there. So really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. I appreciate you, Dan, and I appreciate, again, taking your time. Brian, next time we got to get on the field and play some lacrosse, right?
Yeah, I guess so. You're going to have to learn the rules, though.
Well, we got a coach right here. So. Dan, thanks so much. Appreciate it. Falcons Corner,
right.
Thank you so much for watching, everyone. We will catch you next time for the next interview with the 5 questions for the coach. Thank you.
Thank you.